For a while, it felt like healing was possible. The air in Silverbrook grew colder as winter approached, but for Elena and Daniel, something warm had begun to take root, something cautious, something fragile, but undeniably real. The afternoons were filled with simple joys. Lily's laughter rang through the training fields as she played with the 6 German shepherds. Daniel taught her how to give commands, how to trust the animals. And in between, stolen glances and shared smiles passed between Elena and Daniel, small moments that, in their quiet intensity, felt bigger than words. Each evening they spent together pulled Elena further out of the darkness she had lived in for so long. The walls she had carefully built around her heart began to crack, brick by painful brick. For the first time since Ryan's betrayal, she allowed herself to imagine a future where she wasn't alone. But life, Elena knew too well, rarely allowed happiness to bloom without consequence. It started with a message, one that appeared suddenly on her phone late one night as she sat curled on the worn leather couch in Daniel's cabin, Lily asleep in the next room. A photo, grainy, shadowed, but it was him, Ryan. The caption beneath it sent cold terror slicing through her veins. "Did you really think you'd seen the last of me?" Her breath caught. Her fingers trembled as she gripped the phone, her vision swimming with memories she had fought so hard to bury. Ryan's sharp words, his lies, the cold way he had disappeared after draining their bank accounts, leaving her and their daughter broken and destitute. "Elena?" Daniel's voice was soft but immediately alert as he noticed the color drain from her face. She looked up, unable to hide the panic. Her voice shook. "He's back." The words tasted bitter on her tongue. Saying them made it real. Daniel's eyes darkened with something fierce, protective. "Ryan?" She nodded, showing him the message. Without hesitation, Daniel's military instincts kicked in. He checked the locks, secured the windows, and made sure Lily remained undisturbed. The German shepherd's 6 living shields seemed to sense the change in the air. They stayed close, their sharp eyes scanning the darkness beyond the cabin walls. Elena sat trembling, the weight of old fear crushing her chest. She wasn't just afraid for herself, she was terrified for Lily, for this delicate new life she was building, for the fragile trust she was learning to give Daniel. "I should have told you more," she whispered, her eyes fixed on her hands. "Ryan wasn't just unfaithful, he was dangerous, manipulative. He wasn't just after money, he played with my mind. I kept things from the police, from everyone, because I was too ashamed, too broken." Daniel knelt in front of her, his hand closing gently around hers. His voice, though low, carried quiet steel. "You're not broken, and you're not alone in this. Not anymore." Tears filled her eyes, not just from fear, but from the raw tenderness in his touch, the sincerity in his words. No one had looked at her that way in years. But something inside her twisted painfully. She was falling for him. And now when? She had everything to lose. Ryan had returned to take it all away. The following days were filled with unease. Daniel refused to let her and Lily return to their house alone. He moved them into his cottage temporarily, keeping the dogs close. Every movement deliberate, every instinct on edge. But the stress began to take its toll. One night, after Lily had been put to bed, Elena and Daniel sat by the fire, the weight of the situation pressing down on them. She could see the strain in his eyes, the quiet pain of a man who carried his own traumas. She could feel her own, heart cracking under the pressure. "I don't want to be a burden," she murmured, her voice barely audible. Daniel's response was immediate. "You're not a burden, Elena. You and Lily. You're the first thing that's felt right in a long time." The words undid her. She reached for him, and when their lips met, tentative at first, then deeper, more desperate, it was like the dam broke. The kiss was full of everything unspoken: fear, longing, the ache of two lonely souls trying to find shelter in each other. But as their passion ignited, neither of them noticed the dark figure watching from the trees beyond the cabin. For days after the incident in the park, Elena couldn't get Daniel Cross out of her mind. There was something about him, something wounded yet strong, distant yet deeply present, that pulled at her in ways she hadn't felt in years. The way his 6 German shepherds had protected her daughter had been no coincidence. Elena knew animals sense things about people, things humans themselves often failed to see. Her heart, though carefully guarded, began to whisper what her mind refused to accept. Maybe not everyone was like Ryan. Still, old habits die hard. She had learned, through pain and survival, never to trust too easily. But Lily, sweet, innocent Lily, couldn't stop talking about Daniel and the hero dogs, as she called them. The little girl's laughter returned, her nightmares eased. And for the first time in so long, Elena caught glimpses of true happiness in her daughter's eyes. One chilly afternoon, driven by equal parts gratitude and curiosity, Elena found herself standing at the gates of Daniel's training facility, on the edge of town. It was simple, a sprawling field, a small cottage, and a sense of peace that seemed to wrap itself around the land. She almost turned back. Her fingers trembled slightly on the iron gate. But before she could retreat, Daniel appeared, wearing worn jeans, a faded black t-shirt, and an expression that managed to be both guarded and surprisingly gentle. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said quietly. "I almost didn't," Elena admitted. "But I wanted to thank you, and I wanted to understand." He nodded, then motioned her inside without another word. The dogs greeted her gently, their eyes intelligent, their movements graceful. Lily wasn't with her this time. Elena wanted to face this man alone first, before inviting him any closer into their fragile world. As they walked the grounds, Daniel finally spoke. "I was in the military," he began, his voice low, almost distant. "Special Forces, Afghanistan, a mission. Went wrong. I lost good men, friends. After that, I couldn't go back. I couldn't be around people without—" He paused, then gave a small, humorless smile. "The dogs helped. They saved me." Elena listened, feeling the weight of his words settle heavily in the air between them. She could see it now, the invisible scars, the loneliness, the sense of a man barely holding himself together. "I know what it's like to lose everything," she whispered, her voice cracking. "My husband Ryan, he didn't die, but he destroyed our lives. He left without warning, took everything we had. Money, security, my trust. He abandoned us." She hadn't meant to say it. The words tumbled out unexpectedly, as though her heart had chosen this moment to unburden itself. Daniel's eyes darkened, his jaw tightening. But when he spoke, his voice was soft. "People like that, they leave more damage than visible bruises." Their eyes met, and something shifted, something powerful and dangerous. A recognition of shared pain. 2 broken souls standing face to face. Over the following weeks, their lives intertwined in gentle, cautious steps. Elena would bring Lily to the training grounds, watching her daughter laugh and play with the shepherds while she and Daniel exchanged careful conversations that grew longer, deeper with each visit. They talked about loss, about fear, about loneliness. And slowly, trust began to bloom where only ashes had been before. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Daniel surprised her by cooking dinner, a simple meal in his small cabin. Elena hesitated at first, every instinct telling her to keep her distance. But something in his steady presence made her stay. They talked for hours, the kind of talk that bypassed small talk and went straight to the heart. She learned he had no family left, that the dogs were everything to him, that he often woke screaming in the night, and he learned that beneath Elena's poised exterior lived a woman still paralyzed by fear that Ryan could return, that history could repeat, that loving again could only end in ruin. As the firelight flickered, Daniel reached out, brushing his fingers lightly over hers. The touch was barely there, but it was enough to send her heart into chaos. She didn't pull away. She couldn't. For the first time in years, Elena felt the smallest flicker of warmth where there had only been cold. She felt alive, desired, and terrified. But neither of them noticed the shadow moving in the distance, the man watching them. Ryan. Blake was back, and the past they both thought buried was about to come roaring back to life. The small town of Silverbrook was the kind of place where nothing truly surprising ever happened. Nestled between rolling hills and endless woods, it was peaceful, slow-moving, and steeped in the kind of old-world charm that made people feel safe. But on that crisp autumn morning, everything changed. The town square, usually filled with the sounds of children playing and neighbors chatting, was suddenly overtaken by panic. Gasps filled the air as 6 enormous German shepherds, sleek and powerful, appeared seemingly out of nowhere. They moved swiftly and silently, forming a tight circle around a small girl in a white dress, barely 6 years old, standing motionless. On the grass, some thought the dogs were attacking, some thought the girl was in grave danger. But as moments passed, what unfolded before their eyes was not an act of aggression, but one of protection, standing just yards away, breathless and frozen. In horror was Elena Carter, the little girl's mother. Her heart thudded painfully against her ribs, and her feet felt rooted to the ground as a lifetime of fear gripped her in a vice. All she could see was her daughter, Lily, standing completely still while the shepherds guarded her like silent sentinels. The scene felt surreal, like something from a dream or perhaps a nightmare. And then, through the stunned crowd, a figure emerged, tall, broad-shouldered, with a quiet, commanding presence that seemed to settle the chaos with nothing but his arrival. Daniel crossed out. Elena had seen him before, though only from a distance. He was the reclusive dog trainer who lived on the edge of town, a man whispered about in hushed voices. Some said he was ex-military. Some said he was dangerous. No one really knew, but in that moment, all she could see was the way he moved, calm, steady, as though nothing could shake him. He lifted a hand and gave a soft whistle. Instantly, the 6 German shepherds responded, backing away with perfect discipline. One by one, they sat at attention, their eyes never leaving the little girl. Elena ran to Lily, gathering her daughter into her arms, her breath coming in sharp, painful bursts. I thought, she stammered, unable to finish the sentence. She's safe, Daniel said softly, his voice low but strangely gentle. His eyes, steel gray and shadowed, met hers for the first time. They weren't attacking, they were protecting her. It was only then that Elena noticed the way the dog's ears stayed alert, their bodies tense, as though guarding against something unseen. The little girl, Lily, nestled into her mother's neck, visibly unharmed but strangely calm. The townspeople stood silently, their confusion slowly giving way to awe and curiosity. No one knew what to say. Elena finally found her voice. I don't understand. Why would they do that? Daniel's expression flickered, something dark, something haunted. Dogs sense things we don't, he murmured. They were keeping her safe. She didn't ask from what. She didn't need to. Because, deep down, in the part of her heart that she never allowed to speak, Elena knew danger wasn't always visible. Sometimes it was in the air itself, in the energy of people, in the lingering echoes of the past. She carried her daughter home that evening, her arms wrapped tightly around Lily as if she could somehow shield her from the world. But her mind kept drifting back to the dogs, to the man with the lonely eyes, and to the unsettling feeling that something was stirring in Silverbrook. Something that wasn't finished with her yet, The next morning, the town was buzzing with rumors. Who was Daniel Cross, really? Why had his dogs reacted that way? And who was the little girl they'd protected so fiercely? For Elena, the questions went even deeper. She had built her life on walls that kept people out, walls that hid the pain of her past, a broken marriage, betrayal, and the bitter sting of abandonment. Ryan Blake, her ex-husband, had left her not just emotionally shattered but financially and spiritually destroyed. He had taken everything. Except Lily. She had sworn never to trust again, but somehow, the way Daniel had looked at her steady, protective, yet carrying his own invisible burdens shook something loose inside her. Something dangerous, something fragile. What Elena didn't know was that this moment, the 6 German shepherds surrounding her daughter, was only the beginning of a chain of events that would unravel everything she thought she knew. And that the man with the broken past would soon become the center of a story filled with love, danger, and a betrayal she could never have imagined.